Hey, so in the first video, what we did is we actually went about building this element and showed you kind of my workflow for how I get stuff here. Now we're going to start to wire this up with data binding so that we can do something useful with it, right? This is neat looking, but like it's not production ready in any way. So the first thing we do is start to look at this and go, well, what do I want to be variable in this if we were to implement a dozen of them? Well, heading. And so it's not heading. Now with a paper card, it's heading, but what is it going to be to your, comments, right? If you have a listing of comments, what is the property that you want to wire into this, single comment or list of comments, if you will? So I could get, well, what would I have? I'd have comment title, right? And comment title would be of type string, and it would have a default value so that we can make sense of it here. And we'll say that the default value would be title in this case. Maybe comment title, just to be more expressive. And I mentioned the reflect to attribute aspect before, which I'll throw in here as to why. What notify and reflect attribute will do is it'll update data binding. And what data binding is basically what's passed into the element as far as a property, whether or not that trickles down and starts to influence things. So if you imagine that I've written an element on a page, like the index page that's here, right? This elms-ln cle comments. And if elms-ln cle comments instead had title equals to it, and the title would be things and stuff. The data binding is how I get that from there down into here and have access to map it to the right place. And so I want that to be comment title. So for starters, it needs to be comment hyphen title. That's a goofy difference between HTML and JavaScript standards. You can't have a hyphen in JavaScript, and you can't have capital letters in HTML. So a hyphen gets turned into a capital of this, and it truncates that. So I've got comment title available to me now. So what I want to do is find the place where I'm going to stick comment title. And the way I'm going to use that is I do these double brackets, open and closed, which implies two-way data binding. If you did single brackets like this, it would be one-way data binding, which would mean that changes up here, like if someone edited the page and changed this information, it would trickle down and update this. But if someone went in or some other script executed and updated this title, it wouldn't bubble it back up into the higher element. These become important when you have lots of complex elements communicating with each other, particularly if they're communicating state or things well beyond just a title that you want reflected places. Generally speaking, I use two-way data binding just because I haven't gotten into any scenarios where it really causes a problem. One way is going to probably be more performant, but that's mostly a guess on my part, just because there would be less to do. So let's see. Okay, so we've got card content here, and it says, hey, you did a great job. Well, what if instead of that, it was actually in our example up here, we had, hey, you did a great job on this submission, and it was inside, and let's say it was a p tag or something. So how do I get that there? Because it's not a property. Well, and there's a difference between Polymer 1 and Polymer 2 as far as this content tag. You can use something called slot in Polymer 2. In Polymer 1, it's content. And so content just means whatever you found inside the tag itself, throw here. This is the easiest way to get HTML passed down from higher order tags, if you will. So now with that, hey, you did a great job on this, and the data binding on my comment title, let's refresh this, and we'll see, hey, I've got things and stuff, and I still have my you did a great job on this. To illustrate the data binding part of that from before, let's move that up a little bit. If I go into this comments thing, and we do hey, it updated, is effectively what that is. So if you have the two-way data binding, you can update it there, and it'll reflect downstream. If you you know, and then from there you can see, well, paper card doesn't reflect to attribute that property, meaning it, it doesn't print it into the DOM here on update. It could still update, it just wouldn't actually display it there in that case. So then I can't go down and change this. But if something below here, like maybe me clicking edit, influenced the title somehow, I could have that change propagate back up to here, and maybe Elmsall and CLE Comments is inside of something even higher that is managing it. So we could start to hollow this out for actions, right? So view, edit, delete, right? The idea would be I'd start taking these and making the ability to do all of them. So it would be, like actions, delete, and an action delete would be, okay, I'll just do delete action, type, let's say string, value, in this case. And in this case, the value would be probably a URL, right? So let's not give it a value. We can play with that. I do like doing the reflect attribute and notify for everything. So let's do action delete. Copy and paste it 3 times, because then we're going to do action view, and we're going to do action edit. Okay. And then these are strings, and so then the idea would be that we would take our action view, and that would replace here. So it's a double brace, action view, paste. Okay, and then I would take that and I would do it for edit, and then this would be action edit, and then I'd take it for delete, and we'd do action delete. Okay, and then to see that actually doing something, we come up here, and we'd say action view equals, and then we would pass in something like that, and we do action edit equals, and we pass in something like that, and we do, actually we're not going to do action delete. Okay, so I've got action view, I've got action edit, and then close my paper styles. In here, we've got this, right? So now edit and delete are getting their paths, that path information from up above. Yes, I know this isn't loading anywhere, so obviously it's just going to kind of keep doing that infinitely. But we don't have delete, so delete is dead, right? Delete doesn't do anything. Well, if I don't want to show delete, it shouldn't be there, right? So let's make it not be there, contextually based on if action delete is called at all. So the way we do that is with template. There's a special element in Polymer. This starts to get a little specific to Polymer as far as being outside the scope of web components, but you can say template is equals DOM-if, and then that is implying that this is an if statement. And then I can do if equals, and in here we can basically do a check for that delete, and so we'll do action delete. And so if there isn't delete, it's Boolean false. If there is delete, it's Boolean true. This is only allowing you to do Boolean statements, but then it's saying at the template level, as far as when this gets printed to the screen, hey, if you don't see delete, then I don't want you putting delete on the screen. And so now we should be placing our tooltips in conjunction with that capability. Now, if they see the comment, they probably will always see a view link, you would think, but we could put that there the same way. So let's paste that template logic in now, and now we've got action view. Cool. We can do the same thing with action edit. All right, close our template tag, and now we've got a bunch of conditional logic around whether or not these things exist. So if I don't see delete, edit, or view come across in the tag, then they shouldn't show up. And now it's gone. So if I go back here and we take out those other links, Now I don't have any actions associated with it at all. And so doing these, this kind of mix of approaches, you can start to conditionally display information based on if it showed up in the first place. So we've got our delete forever. Let's see, just review that we kind of tokenized this a bit. Yeah, okay, so that looks good. So let's allow this is called comments, right? And this currently is not a comment. So I would probably actually make this another element that's called CLE comment. And so let's do that abstraction. I end up doing this a lot, right? Where you build something and you go, oh, you know what? This is actually repurposable and would be really useful to use in a higher context, if you will. And so it would be really useful to have a comment card of some kind. So let's go into element area. We've got our source and we've got our CLE comments, right? So let's paste another one in there. I'm just going to copy the file, and this one I'm going to call, I'm just going to call it Drupal comment or something, right? So then let's bring Drupal comment over here. And now all the paths are still correct for Drupal comment, which is the cool thing. The only parts that would need to change, because I changed the name, are here. So I would need to change this DOM module part, which helps with registering with the browser, and this, which helps registering when you do build files. It helps reassociate this script to it. So I'm going to do Drupal comment, and so that effectively is registering our tag. It's going to find it because of Drupal comment. Let's take out property 1. We don't need property 1 anymore. Okay, all our language is relative to comments. Cool. Let's now see, okay, well, how would we now use this in elm-zln CLE comments? Well, if we look at our index, how it used it, we can copy that. Let's delete everything. Take this back to basically a base element. We're going to take out even that actions A part. We're going to change this tag to be Drupal comment, and this one to be Drupal comment. Okay, so same tag, hits the other one, but the only difference is now I need to reference this other tag in order to use it. So this is in the same folder as this one, so I can do rel link import, and we're not going to need to go anywhere. We'll just go right there and do Drupal-comment. Now I've imported, I just made another element. So now I can stamp out the element for comments to display a whole bunch of comments, and maybe, to illustrate this, there we go, there's 3. So I've got 3 comments that'll stamp out now, but I've abstracted comment into its own thing. And so now, this is what it would look like if we started to have, 3 comments. I think you can start to see how powerful this development approach is I just took a few seconds there, and now I made this completely repurposable. So I basically made my own little API for how to make comment cards at this point. We could say, okay, well, comments are being displayed as block. If we did inline flex instead of block, and this is partly a guess, but there we go. Now, because cards are told to be inline flex, it's just going to start to stack them up that way. And so now I just made a, mini responsive grid of elements with very little effort by making the elements themselves able to be responsive. So now let's work towards hooking this up to data. Sorry, wrong window there. So I've got my comment as a standalone, awesome, and then I've got comments, which is for presenting them. But I obviously don't want to put down this, and I need to clean up my properties because I don't need all these properties anymore for this. So let's get rid of a whole bunch of these. And we're just going to make a property here called data source. And data source is going to be an object. And we don't want to reflect the attribute because we're going to have an object, right? So because we're getting closer to being able to wire this up to real stuff. So we're going to use another awesome little element in the Polymer universe, and it's DOM repeat. And so you get template, and this template is a DOM repeat. If if I could spell, that would help. And so the way a DOM repeat works is a DOM repeat gives you the ability to iterate over items and apply the same thing over and over again. So items, I'm not going to put any items in there at the moment, but the items would be, I'm going to paste an example here real quick. I'm going off of when I wrote this last time. But in this case, go to that. So items might be items that's passed in from somewhere, right? And this wouldn't be items, this would probably be like data or response or something, right? And we're not printing images, we're printing comment. And so what this will let you do, if we put this in place now, is I go, okay, well, I don't want 3 comment tags to be printed. I want to stamp comments down, basically. I want a template stamper to start smashing these things into the interface. So we're going to make a file that has this data in it, and we're going to call it data.json. And data.json is going to basically be fake comment data. And so we're going to have an array of items, and in our array we have object, and in the object we're going to have title equals comment title, and then we're going to have view, and view is going to equal node 1, 2, 3 / comments. Okay, that would be to view the comment itself, and then we would have edit, and this would be node 1, 2, 3 comments 34 / edit or something like that, right? This would be for seeing that comment, and then we might have body, and the body of this might be a comment here. So I have a JSON linting thing. It's probably going to complain about this a little bit, but let's see, make sure that I actually have the right structure here. So what I do then is I go to jsonlint.com, do this a lot when I'm building. No, I don't want to support that right now. Validate, okay, so this is valid JSON. It did clean it up a little bit. So what I can do now is we're going to paste this a few times, take out that last comment. Now I've got a series of comments. I've got 3 comments in here. And we'll do another title and more stuff just so we can illustrate there's going to be a difference. So let's copy that, which is now nicely formatted JSON, into this array. And so I've got an array of objects effectively. Now let's save data.json, which I just did. Okay, so now data.json is saved into this same folder. And what I'm going to do now is use one of the coolest stinking elements in the whole universe with these, which is iron-ajax. And an iron-ajax allows you to make a web request automatically for data, and it pipes it into an object. So in this case, I'm going to say, hey, the URL is data.json, which, because it's in this folder, it'll find the relative location for it. And then on response, or actually, sorry, it's called last. It's called last response is a tag you can use in it. If you do last response, and I say this, we're going to take out that on response part. This is effectively saying, hey, we're going to bind to response, so then I better make response exist. Object, and we'll do notify true. Okay, so I'm going to ask when the page loads, I'm going to automatically make an AJAX call at this URL, which is my data source. I'm going to handle that data source as JSON, and then I'm going to load whatever I find into this response object. So I probably need to actually get iron-ajax in this case. So we're going to go back here to our elements, search for iron-ajax. Okay, copy that, go to terminal, paste it in. Now it's going to ask which one I want. Because I have polymer 1, I'm sticking with the 1x attributes, if you will. So that's, if you're not familiar with Bower, it does dependency management there. So let's go to our element here and see what breaks. Something should. Oops, the something that should break is the fact that that's 10 miles long for starters. So let's look at the network, see if it made any web requests or anything. No, because it doesn't know what to do with iron-ajax. So I can then, I gotta go here, and I will paste, and then we'll do iron-ajax, whoops, iron-ajax, all right. Okay, got iron-ajax tag in there, save, refresh. And now, you see we did make an XHR when the page loaded, and we went and got this object that has this information in it. That's neat. So hooked up data to be pulled in to response. Now I'm calling a function right now called toArray, and toArray doesn't exist. This is just a utility function that I wrote that I end up using all over the place, I've noticed, with response data coming back. So I'm going to throw that in just because I have it in my paste queue. But effectively, what it's going to do here, we'll clean it up. I actually don't want to even do that. I just want to return the object key. Basically, this is going to convert the data that comes across from an object into an array. That needs to happen in order for this to do anything meaningful, basically. So we're effectively saying on our last response, go through an array of items, right? So we've got it pulled in from the other side. So it's not printing it out. So I need to probably take my response, and I need to, response is supposed to be an array of values to go through. Let's see if that helps at all. Well, let's at least get this hooked up to the data source correctly. So data source shouldn't be that object, should be string. We are making the XHR correctly, but it's not pulling anything in. So this would be bound to the URL so that we could have a property, in this case on elms-ln CLE comments, which would be data source. And then in this case, this would be src, would be data.json, but it's going to have to be relative pathed, I believe, because of the import location. So we would do something like that. So now at least we should have 2A data binding with that item. So we've got data JSON, still made the correct request, and still got that data back, and got so as content. What we need to do is then realize, well, we would have access to this, object. And so the reason you do the as, right, you've got this items as, which allows you to say in here, well, hey, I want you to print out comment. And then if I look at my JSON array, for example, be .title. So this lets you kind of wire things up to your data source. So I could then paste all these in here and do comment.view, and this would be comment.edit, and then this would be comment.body. And we refresh, not getting any of those printed in. Go to our body, comments, our template is claiming to be a document fragment. So, way too much debugging to realize that literally that was a typo. Response. And so the property is tag is last response to stuff it in so the location. And now we hit refresh, get what we should see, which is it just Ajax loaded that data off the other side. Got view and edit, all those things. So now if I go into my JSON file here, and we're going to try something. We're going to add to this one a delete property. And that would be comment delete. And then to the first one, we're going to get rid of edit. And so now, when we refresh, we see this case without the button there. We see I didn't do the delete case correctly. So we can go back over to here. And we do action delete equals comment.delete. And now we get our delete can on the one that allows that, delete forever, with these other ones in place. You will notice that it's got this encapsulation here. So if you're doing, and this is especially true with CMS development or anything that's doing server-side rendering, if you're doing server-side rendering, these properties are going to be character encoded. So you can't just directly put them there. So show you the way we would go about doing that is we do, let's put an ID on this. The ID is going to let us do some more traditional JavaScript to target this. And so our ID is going to be body. And so our comment body in this case. And so comment body, we're going to need to set up, we noticed before when we did iron-ajax, there was a on response. And so we're going to add in that on response, which means, hey, fire this function after you get a response back. So we're going to go into on response here. And we're going to do handle response, function E for the event. And so in this case, it would have access to this information. And we could target this, via the handle response, but that's actually just going to put one of these in place. So this is getting to a rather interesting problem that you can run into at times as far as needing to come up with a way of getting this HTML to render in place here. Now what I've done with some other things is you can do, there's this kind of magic polymer element, if you will. So I could say like this dot, in this case, that wouldn't be content, this would be comment body, dot inner HTML, and then I would pull from my response, whatever the content of my response is, and then the body tag in this case. Because I'm doing this, iterating over several elements, I'd actually have to find a different way to handle that. So for right now, I'm not doing that with the rendering the full HTML body. What I've done with other ones is I would make it triggered based on opening something, right? So maybe you click a button and pop open, and then that would have just a single element injection. You do need to be careful when you're doing this because you are actually, you're kind of opening yourself up to some form of exploit as far as like you need to trust what information is coming across that AJAX response that you're doing this inner HTML with. There is the ability to handle things like this in Polymer 2 a little bit better via slotting or that content in the object form, but we're not going to cover that right now. So for now, I'm just going to have, hey, there's body there, and if it has HTML in it, then it does. So this is pretty close to talking to an external source, right? So what our little example does is it contextually places these buttons on here. It doesn't know the path to them, but it contextually places the buttons on here. It puts our title in place, and it puts our body in place. The encapsulation will have to be covered in another video. So the next step we're going to do is take this from not talking to Drupal app to talking to Drupal, right? So all the hard work is done.